Story 1. 3 weeks after I caught her in infidelity, I had a random moment of clarity. What am I doing? Story 2. We were having dinner, and they were explaining to me the latest way I had made a mistake and was obviously completely in the wrong. Nothing new. I don't even remember what it was that I had done or not done. But for some reason, this time when I was listening to them, I didn't feel the need to acquiesce and just admit I was wrong to end the argument or the need to defend myself. I just didn't care. It occurred to me in that moment that I had no interest in continuing the charade that we were going to make it if I just accepted that everything I do was wrong or problematic and they were infallible. So I calmly waited for them to finish their point and said, "I don't love you anymore." Story 3. Sometimes you do not realize it all at once. It is not always a dramatic shift. Sometimes it is the silence in the car that used to feel peaceful but now feels loud. It is when you stop sharing the little things because you know they will not care or will not ask. It is when you start imagining moments in life and they are not in the picture. It is when you look at them one day and realize you care, but you are not in it anymore. Your soul stopped leaning toward them. That is when you know. Story 4. When you are not excited to be around them, do not want to be touched or kissed by them, and realize you can fall in love with someone else. Story 5. When I caught him cheating again, I felt nothing but relief. Relief that I was going to kick him out. Relief that my gut feeling was right. Relief that I didn't have to worry anymore. A big sigh of relief. Story 6. The instant you become anxious in the slightest way to be around them. Not the nervous first date feeling, but the "what am I getting criticized for today" feeling. Story 7. We both fell out of love with each other. She would not make time for me anymore, and her gestures became rude and insensitive. I was no longer excited to see her, stopped communicating because I knew it would not go anywhere, grew sick of navigating these conversations alone, and kept fantasizing about being in a relationship with someone more mature and emotionally stable. Story 8. When I stopped having sex with him, he was never interested in pleasuring me. Only his own joy mattered. I waited patiently for years, hoping he would change when certain things happened. But one day, I woke up and knew he would never change. Story 9. The messages from them no longer make you smile as they once did. You would rather spend time apart than together. You do not feel like sharing anything anymore. Story 10. I worked hard for my relationship. I was fully committed. We talked about marriage, buying a home together, and building a life together. I spent my time trying to actively make their day better every day. There are many things you can say about me, but being a bad partner is not one of them, especially when I'm in love. My best but worst habit is that I'm a giver. I could say many things they did that I would define as abusive and manipulative, but I won't. The final straw was whenever I asked for help, it became a problem. This was a pattern. I could help them for hours every single day of the week, but if I dared ask for their help with anything, it would lead to an argument. Finally, I was in a really bad spot and needed their help. They left me to struggle, stopped responding, and acted like it didn't happen. They sent me a TikTok hours later as if nothing had occurred. That was my clarity moment. Regardless of how I felt about them or how they felt about me, they didn't love me the way I needed, and they didn't have my back. What does it matter if you are fully committed when the other person keeps not showing up for you? Resentments build, and that kind of life just hardens the heart. I left them and don't regret it, despite how much it still hurts. Story 11. I started crossing out the bad days I had with them on my calendar and realized good days were losing that battle. Story 12. He had to be knocked out for a medical procedure, and I was secretly hoping he would never wake up. I was alarmed at my thought process but knew in that moment it was over. Story 13. A lot of these applied to me in my last relationship. There was a gradual fallout of feelings that happened over the course of a year, probably. We were together for a total of 3 years, getting married after a year. I kept brushing the unpleasant feeling away, thinking, this feeling will go away, right? Didn't. It only got worse. I didn't want to be touched or do anything outside the house with her. It just wasn't enjoyable to be around her or do things with her anymore. The causes were many, but between her violent outbursts, including a threat to harm me, which was the last straw, and emotional abuse, it just happened like that. Ending it was the best thing I ever did, and I found my peace. We went to marriage counseling for about 9 months, and I thought it was helping a little, but then the same pattern started again. My therapist said to me, "We can't change how people are. It's just a question of whether you are willing to put up with them as a person." That helped me make the decision to end it. Story 14. I was dreading their messages that appeared at the same time every day when I was at work, like clockwork. Story 15. We were really struggling to afford food once our bills were paid, and I was the primary earner. I did not mind that, but when I asked him to look for a job with more hours or better pay, he flat out refused because he wanted to play games instead. He worked less than half the hours I did, but still expected me to do all the chores and half of the cooking. The breaking point was on my birthday, which was also Valentine's Day, when we were in the same room but not speaking. I am not sure if he even acknowledged my birthday. He was laughing while playing a game with his friends, and I was crying at the other end of the room. We broke up a couple of weeks later because I could have dealt with the unequal division of labor if I had to, but I was not about to do it for someone so ungrateful and unfeeling towards me. Story 16. They went away on a solo holiday for over a month, a trip of a lifetime kind of deal. They had been planning it for a long time and made it clear from the start that this was something they needed and wanted to do by themselves. I couldn't afford it or get enough time off work for the whole trip anyway. But in the lead up to it, I was upset because I felt I hadn't really been considered. We had been together for 4 years and living together for 3, so it was not a new relationship. Then, when they went on the trip and I had the flat to myself, I felt relief. Not just, I get to watch the shows my partner doesn't like and starfish in bed relief. It felt like, this is how I want to live my life relief. I started dreading their return. A couple of months after they came back, we broke up. I live alone now, and it is the best thing I have ever done for myself. There were many other issues in the relationship leading up to this, but their leaving on that trip was when I knew I needed out. They were my best friend, and I still have a lot of love for them, but we both needed very different things. The COVID-19 pandemic really accelerated our relationship in a way that was not apparent until much later. Story 17. When I found out she was cheating on me, she admitted it, and I didn't care. I felt relieved that I could finally end the relationship. Story 18. It was not worth fighting for it. I will fight for you, but you have to fight for yourself as well. If I ask every day, did you take your medication? Did you call the doctor? Did you do the things the psychiatrist and the physiotherapist told you to do? And you keep answering no, I am not going to stay around long. Cannot live like that. Story 19. I guess I knew for years that I was not happy. If it was her weekend to work, I felt calm and relaxed. When she was off for the weekend, I was tense and felt like a stranger in my own house. We have kids, and it was so great to just be with them. Since we divorced, I know a freedom I had not felt in years. My self-esteem and self-confidence have returned. If you know she is a narcissist, get out of Dodge. Story 20. My friend told me she realized that if she caught her husband cheating on her, she would not be jealous or hurt. That was when she understood she had no emotional attachment left. Story 21. I didn't stop loving them. I just realized that I had fallen in love with a character they created. The thing holding me in the relationship was the hope that she was real but just hidden, that I could somehow bring her back to the surface. I love who I fell in love with, but I accept that she never existed. Story 22. When she took a 2-month trip out of state to see her lover, it was my favorite time in our marriage. Story 23. When you no longer care how others will react to good or bad news. The opposite of love is not hate. It is apathy. My ex and I had an agreement. She would decorate and care for the inside of the house, while I would handle the outside. One weekend, I decided to paint the master bathroom with colors I liked. I did not ask her. I just did it. I did not really care what she thought about it. She had given up long before I did. After I stopped caring, it was time to involve a lawyer. Best decision ever. Story 24. We were on our way to my cousin's wedding when they decided it was a great time to talk about buying a new car. Even though we had just gotten a new car a month before, I suggested that maybe we should wait until the other car reached the end of its life because it still drives fine. They did not speak to me for the rest of the night. It was a wedding with my whole family there. Cool times. Story 25. When I pulled into the driveway and saw her car, I felt anxiety. When her car was gone, I felt relief. It still took her cheating again for me to finally kick her out. Story 26. I realized everything we had together we could have as friends. There was nothing left that made it special or romantic. No spark, no tenderness, no special moments. Story 27. I am eternally bound to my wife because of our son. However, it is definitely no longer like it used to be. I do not want anything to happen to her, but I actively try to avoid spending too much time with her. Story 28. I hoped he would meet someone else and leave. I stopped wanting to have sex with him. We did not talk to each other at home, and I spent more time with my friends than with him. We became roommates and are not really good friends, to be honest. We are getting divorced, and I think we are both happier overall and better off. Story 29. The person was annoying, too dramatic, and constantly whining about everything. She refused the help that I offered her. Story 30. When I was working hard for money, benefits, and career advancement while also going back to school, she got bored, cheated, then gaslit me and lied about it repeatedly. Looking back, I realized I was just her parent. She never loved me as I needed. We never held hands or kissed. She didn't light up around me. She'd come home from hanging out with her guy friend, bright, happy, and provocative, and I knew it was over, or it never really started. She gave him love, energy, esteem, and attention she never gave me. Even our honeymoon was miserable. The only reason we were together was because she was wounded, lonely, and deeply abused as a child, and I felt bad for her and wanted to give her love, peace, and stability. I ended up losing mine. I hurt myself badly. That destroyed my loyalty to her, and I'll never like or trust her again. Obviously, I love her spiritually and have a duty to her well-being because I care, but I'll never allow myself to be in love with her or be vulnerable to her again. It was a mistake to let her close at all. I'm cautious about women overall. I attract many unwanted love triangles where I lose. It's strange, women want me, but they want the other guy more, yet they won't let me go with integrity. Men do this too, but it's less devastating, probably because I'm more emotionally connected to women than men. So, I'm not in love with anyone right now. I want real love, though. Although I'm very sensitive at this point, dating will be hard. The next time someone holds my hand or holds me, I'll probably break down crying, which will be awkward and too vulnerable. I'll likely hold it all in and seem aloof, even though I'm overwhelmed with complicated emotions. I wish I didn't crave human touch and connection. It would make my life much easier. Story 31. When I had a friend come over, a really attractive guy who had been somewhat flirty with me in the past, I thought if he tries something tonight, I will go along with it. He did not, and no cheating happened. But that night, I knew I had to end my relationship because there was no coming back from this. Story 32. When my wife told me she wanted children only to keep me around, I was relieved that we were infertile. As we separated, I slowly realized she only thought of me as an object on a shelf. I am glad I did not have a child with her just to be placed next to me on that same shelf. It hurts, and I feel alone and depressed because of it. Story 33. I had already caught her cheating, but it was not until a month later, on our 10th anniversary, that she woke up at his place. I am embarrassed that it took so long, frankly, but 12 years and 2 children, plus never being able to tell her no. Story 34. As a new mom to a 1-year-old, I had 2 relatives die within 24 months of each other. My husband was upset that I was depressed and couldn't understand why. He kept calling me depressing. He just wanted more intimacy because, for some reason, I was not interested like before. He couldn't figure it out. After all his begging, I finally caved and had sex. Afterward, he said I wasn't enthusiastic enough and that I wasn't thinking of his needs. He called me selfish. I mourned 3 losses that year: my brother, my dad, and my marriage. I am officially divorced. Story 35. I knew it was over when she ate all my chicken tenders before I got home from work. Not some Not half. All of them. Every day I'd come back thinking, maybe today she left me just one. Nope. Empty box. Not even a crumb. Not even a napkin left behind to say sorry. That kind of betrayal sits deep in your soul. I started looking at her differently. If you can look me in the eye after inhaling a family-sized tender box meant for two, what else are you capable of? So yeah, that was it. No big blowout. No cheating scandal. Just cold tenders that never made it to my plate. And that's when I knew it was time to end it all. For my heart and for my lunch. Story 36. She had a threesome with an old family friend I have known since birth. Took another 8 years for us to divorce, but I fell out of love after I learned of the affair. Story 37. Started experiencing derealization when around them. I was physically present but wanted to be anywhere else. Story 38. I was having a hard time sleeping at night, ruminating about knowing something like this is not recoverable. Story 39. Funny enough, I felt relieved once I found out that she was cheating. I laughed, told her that the guy could have her, and felt like a boulder was lifted from my shoulders. Story 40. I think I've lived and experienced enough to say you never fall out of love with someone you truly love to begin with. You can actively choose not to love someone if they betrayed you or were abusive. But the idea that I could involuntarily stop loving someone I love is impossible for me to imagine. In long-term relationships, individuals often fade into the background of life as it evolves. One or both partners begin taking the relationship for granted. Feels less like love and more like normal, boring life. No surprises, no romance, no chemistry. Those things take effort and desire from both partners. The easiest way to deal with that is to convince yourself you fell out of love, then look for someone who will make it feel like love again. But if you never address the root issue, you will probably repeat the cycle, making things worse each time you choose that easy path. You may one day live to regret it and realize you had love all along. You just didn't know how to revive it. Story 41. My ex-partner. When she said, "I love you," immediately my mind started coming up with excuses for why I could not say it back. The phrase, "if he could, he would," is true, and I realized that I needed to break things off. Story 42. When he threw a gym bag at my head. Also, when my friends explained to me that coerced is not acceptable, so to speak. Story 43. I have had notoriously bad New Year's Eves. Long story. On a New Year's when we were stuck inside, she drank and went crazy on me so badly that I had a panic attack begging her to stop. She was at my house, but the weather was so bad that I could not let her leave. She would not quit until I was literally vomiting from the stress. I waited until the next time I saw her a few weeks later to break the news. Story 44. When sharing the same bed as him, it was impossible to sleep because I wasn't completely confident he wouldn't harm me while I was unconscious. Story 45. When I realized that my entire life was fake and I had misinterpreted sexual desire as love, I understood that love is something without personal desire, but it is too high for me to reach. Story 46. His birthday was coming up. Instead of feeling my typical joy and excitement to make the day special, I felt dread. Story 47. When it was my birthday, I did not hear from him. I asked to meet his friends and hang out during the day, but he said no. Story 48. When they read a list of 15 to 20 things I had done wrong, including things I had not done, such as demanding jewelry as a gift. Story 49. Her alcoholism increased significantly around the time she began a relationship with her massage therapist. That was a wake-up call. Story 50. It has been around 1 year since I last thought about her. It happened 6 years after my divorce. It made me sad. I liked liking her. Story 51. When her comments about me and my life did not feel caring, encouraging, or supportive, but rather nagging, judging, or complaining. Story 52. When he kept saying, "I do not care," anytime I tried to talk to him about my feelings, a concern, or an issue in our relationship, he would not respond after a while and kept repeating those words. One day, I stopped caring too. Story 53. When the girl he was unfaithful with messaged me unexpectedly last night, I have not slept or eaten. Story 54. I was making excuses not to spend time with her and dreaded it whenever we did. I still felt obligated to stay with her, though. She would become very suicidal when I tried to break up, and it took a few attempts for it to stick. Story 55. Towards the end of our relationship, during a difficult period, he did not talk to me for a week straight. I cried myself to sleep every night after being ignored all day, only to find out from his friend that he had decided to take a break and did not bother to tell me. Then he texted me out of nowhere asking about my day, and that is when I broke up with him over FaceTime on the bathroom floor. It finally clicked that he did not truly care about me and never really showed it. I also noticed all the times he outright refused to show even the slightest bit of physical affection with me in public. I was just being ignored and not given anything in return despite losing myself for him. Story 56. Partially when I realized I liked hanging out with her and my other friends and stopped feeling the urge to seek out alone time with her as much, I thought, I think this is becoming more platonic. Then weeks later, she said, "Hey, I think this is platonic now. Should we break up?" We spent a week testing being broken up and mutually decided it worked better. We still hung out as friends for a while after that until college. To be honest, we were still kids moving in two different directions in life. Story 57. She went on a 2-week vacation trip. I was initially sad and decided to spend that time cleaning, practicing self-care, and hanging out with friends. As the date of her return approached and I saw how much I had accomplished, I realized I was dreading that moment. After having a serious discussion with her, 6 months later, I understood there wasn't much that could mend my feelings, so I ended the relationship. Story 58. I think love is a choice. There are things that can amplify it or deteriorate it, like appearance, intimacy, and how they treat you, but you make a conscious choice to love them every day. I realized I didn't love someone when I noticed I was trying too hard to love them for the sake of loving someone, rather than because they gave me any reason to love them. Story 59. I became difficult overnight. He mentioned it weeks later when I was just acting up. Then I realized that was the problem. Story 60. He was verbally and mentally abusive and could get physically rough, but he never actually hit me. I started wishing he would hit me so I would have a good enough reason to leave. That made me realize that I had not loved him for a long time. I felt nothing but relief when I finally left, and I did not wait around for the abuse to get worse. Story 61. When I was ready for it to end, for both our sakes, it was not toxic. After several years, the love on both sides was no longer romantic. I think we are both happier now. This was not about losing new relationship energy. We were together for 9 years, and around year 7 we both started to feel the shift. Story 62. She accuses me of cheating constantly, even though I go to work and come home every day. Unfortunately, she is my wife. Story 63. My ex-wife and I were at my parents' 50th anniversary party, and people kept making "that'll be you someday" comments. We both just shrugged them off and looked embarrassed. We knew it was time. There wasn't much drama. We just fell out of love with each other. The divorce was extremely amicable. Story 64. When I realized I never wanted to be in a relationship with him, he gradually wore me down until I felt I had to go along with it. Story 65. When he screamed in my face to be quiet after I asked for the truth, it shriveled and died right there. Story 66. When I looked at him, I thought, I don't even like you anymore, so I know I don't love you. What was I going through to be with you? Story 67. When I started to get annoyed with his long, sweet messages, don't get me wrong, I appreciate them. I love receiving long, sweet messages. But the thing is, with my ex, he was illiterate. I lived with his long, sweet messages filled with grammatical errors and misspelled words for nearly 2 years. Sometimes he would overuse emojis as well. At first I thought, he's so cute, at least he's trying. But when I realized them, I was no longer in love with him. I would look at his long, sweet messages and sigh because I didn't understand a thing he was saying. I might be wrong, but I got tired of him calling me my sweet, precious dragon kitty, or my wife in the whole wide world. I also got tired of him spelling because as boss, and no matter how much I corrected him, he would still misspell it over and over again. Story 68. When I took her one day and saw the monster she was underneath, So fake, so phony. I was done at that point when I started sleeping on the floor or in the living room instead of the bed. Sometimes she asked me simple things and I didn't have a care in the world on my face. When I kept catching her cheating, I stopped caring and just felt dead on the inside. Story 69. I started staying at work as much as I could. I had to stop and ask myself why, and that is when I realized how I felt. Story 70. I never did. We didn't end things because we didn't love each other anymore. We just weren't supposed to be. Hurt like hell. Story 71. When she stopped even making me food while she made it for herself and others, and then left me saying she was not coming back. Story 72. When you accidentally catch yourself thinking how much easier life would be if they died. Story 73. My ex-fiancé and I were together for 5 years. Right after meeting each other, I developed a strange stomach illness that completely destroyed my life and affected everyone who loved me. I was bedridden throughout the relationship except for the rare times I was well enough to leave the house. He was strong, loving, and supportive almost the entire time. Watching my family and partner suffer because of my random illness became too hard. No doctor could tell me what it was or how to get better. It's all in your head, they would say. But I was sick to my stomach every day for 5 years. I gave my ex ultimatums. Once a year I would say, if I'm this miserable, I can't imagine how hard it is for you. If I can't be the wife you need, I want you to find your happiness, even if it can't be with me. Don't ruin your life because I'm suffering. Save yourself. But he kept saying he wasn't going anywhere and that he loved me. Fast forward 3 years in, he asked me to marry him. Obviously, I said yes. He was everything I ever wanted. But then the fighting got horrible. He became distant. I found explicit pictures from Instagram women, and then there was yelling, blaming, avoidance, and resentment. But he kept saying he wasn't going anywhere and that we were going to be okay. So I chalked it up to how hard it must be to take care of a sick person. I defended every act of hate and clung to every hug and every "I love you." It became very hard for both of us. I admit I was weak, and in all my begging for basic emotional support, I became suicidal. The night I tried, he kicked me out because I need to not need him so much, and he wanted to be alone for a few days. So I packed myself and our cats and went to the hospital. After coming home from the hospital, I was so sad and missed him greatly. But he wanted me to stay at my mom's longer, so I did. Then I relapsed. He said I feel too much, so I tried to stop feeling. When he found out, he ended the relationship and ghosted me. I still love him and would take him back in a heartbeat. I almost didn't survive the heartbreak. But it's been almost 3 months, and we live in the same town. I don't think I'll ever get over him completely. I have no heart left to give away anyway. Story 74. When his terrible behavior pushed me towards suicidal thoughts, I recovered, and then he did it again. It took another couple of years for that to actually happen. Story 75. When I realized that being with him had a huge emotional cost and caused a lot of anxiety. Also, when I realized that in his good moments he preferred other people's company, despite me being the most supportive and loyal person in his life. He was cutting me off from the very activities and hobbies we had in common that had tied us together, choosing to share those with other people. Story 76. Put us $50,000 in debt. Refused to listen to advice but continued until she went bankrupt. Told me to give her my paycheck so she could manage our money. Got mad at me and said we are in this situation because I am now $17,000 in debt due to credit card usage. I used my credit card to cover bills, food, and everything else because she was short of money. Not to mention she let herself go and looked like a boy. I couldn't stand her. She let her emotions control everything. We would argue and I would present facts, but she would start crying and say it's the way she feels. So basically, her behavior is validated because of her feelings. I'm married to a different woman now, a totally different world. My wife is attractive, smart, womanly, and I love my wife. Story 77. Beginning of the year, it would have been 6 years married in August and 12 years together. I've come to realize that I'm capable of making myself happy by doing what I want to do when I want to do it. We are just beginning separation after many fights and her mentioning divorce. This last time I said, you know what, that sounds great. She is a great mother to our kids, and we've had ups and downs. I work and provide for everything, and I just wanted her to make life easier for me. Doing my laundry, cleaning the areas in the house that mattered most to me, and cooking daily. I was doing these things when I got home from work, and it took away time that could have been spent differently. No time for personal interests. I felt like I was never off work. I already work a lot in my day job and my side hustle. I didn't have peace. I'll miss seeing my kids every day, but they won't see us arguing anymore. Story 78. So imagine this girl that I engaged with knowingly. Everything went smoothly. I bought rings and sometimes hung out with her at night. But what made me realize the truth was how she talked about me behind my back. Kind of like a slave. I live in a small town where rumors spread faster than light. That made me lose interest. Turns out that for 3 weeks she was even chatting with another guy. She chatted and talked trash behind my back. She didn't even contribute to paying when we went out. It turns out that I was a slave blinded by false love. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.